So how and why do certain surfers enjoy crap surf while others need to have the best waves possible? One main reason, and as you saw in the thumbnail and title, is growing up on the East Coast, it will humble you. It will make you want to surf whatever you see in that ocean.
Whatever you see.
Oh, there I am. I am live and I can hear myself. But I think it's super interesting because I grew up on the East Coast and now I live in California. And I, luckily, even living out west for 10 plus years, am still always stoked when there's at least a little something out there. And I know we see on the Instagrams and on the memes, etc., the East Coast surfer versus kind of the California, or I would say even like the good wave spot surfer. But we can generalize for this video as like a California versus the East Coast. Both parties go to the beach.
Versus the East Coast.
Oh, there I am again. One person's going to think pretty much no matter what, like, oh, it sucks out there. It could even be pretty good, but you might not think it's that great. The other person is going to think, oh, wow, like, it's sick, and really it sucks. Now, this dichotomy, and the funny part is it's the same wave you're looking at. It's not like it's 2 different days, 2 different sessions. This could be the same beach, the same wave both surfers are looking at, and each one's going to have a different opinion on how good the waves are. And this could really just be based down to like where you grew up surfing. If you grew up in a spot that wasn't very good that often at all, when it got good once every couple weeks, you were pretty stoked. And it almost created this weird sense of urgency and scarcity because you never got good waves. So when then you're an East Coast person in California or Hawaii or Australia, and there's actually a constant swell at all times, it's not just flat spells intermixed with good waves. You actually already have such an appreciation for the waves being good that you're going to be stoked on just having waves because you have dealt with so long never having waves that even wave motion in the ocean is going to get you like super pumped. Now, I'm a testament to this actually not even running a course. You can have such a scarcity mindset ingrained in you, and for me, it's with good waves of surfing, that I'm never going to be like disappointed if there's at least a waist high wave out there. Because I remember those days, driving around the Outer Banks, North Carolina, you would go to one spot and it'd be this 2 to 3 hour window and you would have to make it at that time, exactly at the swell, tides, everything's perfect, wind, weather, and you check the waves. And it would either be good or wouldn't be good. But if it was good, it was almost a weird situation because you were not used to seeing good waves. So you were stoked, but at the same time you thought, well, if it's good here and it's that good here, I wonder how much better it is over there. But it's a lot different when you go to that other spot and then the swell has left, the tide has gotten high, and now it sucks. And you actually miss the opportunity, and now you don't get another opportunity like that for, I got an opportunity you can't refuse. There's a good wave down here, you take this, how much you want. But you're pretty like scarred from this because it's just such a frustrating, it's supposed to be this like super fun, awesome time, and you're like stressed out over going surfing in the ocean because you know that you only have these certain times of the certain swell and the certain tides and winds and all this kind of just like, it ends up being like your Twister in the movie Twister chasing a storm. And I wanted to make this video because I think it's fitting with the Ernesto thing. Whereas like you're seeing Ernesto is actually, causing some havoc and some mayhem. It doesn't seem to be too crazy in terms of like, I don't mean any disrespect if people are dealing with things right now, But like it seems to be a lot of flooding and just we'll see what goes, but what happens. But for surfing, it's actually produced some really great surfing waves. And it kind of always reminds me this is like the typical hurricane season for an East Coast surfer. And so we get this little couple month period where we're finally like getting waves and we're finally like living like people do out in California where there's swell, you follow a swell, you try to like score this session. Like we finally get to do that. And we only get to do it, you know, twice every fall. And we're doing it during like a natural disaster. So the natural disaster is happening. It's pretty much like a earthquake or a tornado or this event that's like super life threatening and dangerous. We are excited about this. So it kind of creates this weird, like we're excited about a hurricane, but it's also, we're supposed to evacuate. And so when it happens out here in California, when like a hurricane happens, it's almost so foreign because it doesn't really make any sense. And there are actually like big waves events in California where the swell is so big that it can cause a lot of damage from a hurricane or not. There can be swells so big in the winter that it's not hurricane based, but there's so much water moving and it gets so big that that's what does the damage. Just the ocean, you know, rising, falling with the tides and such. Hurricanes like almost a more extreme version of that. But it's just so interesting because that kind of scarcity mindset as an East Coast person, once you are older and you are in a like a wave rich environment, it's funny because like I thought that I would kind of become spoiled too, like in this kind of just like story as old as time, whereas oh, it's not that good today, and like it's really good, but because you're from California, the waves are always kind of good, and you know, like or whatever. And then you could even see it in like Reddit threads and stuff when people are like from San Diego and they're talking about the waves in San Diego, and they're like, "All right, what do you mostly surf?" And someone's like, "Oh, San Diego poop," or like, "Oh, San Diego slop." And it's funny when they're saying this because like if they wouldn't last a day on the creek, if you get the reference, but it's interesting because it's like such a individual thing to say based on just what you're used to. Like if you weren't used to always having waves, that would be like pretty awesome to have crappy wind slop every day. So it's kind of like the most extreme version of this is living in the Great Lakes or living in like Texas, where you literally have waves once a year, and it's like for the Great Lakes, you're like you're ice plunging the whole session. So it's these extreme kind of cases of that, but it's funny how if you grow up in one of those environments and then you get to be in an environment where there's always surf and there's always a little something in a vicinity, in a 30-mile drive, you can find a wave to longboard. It creates this kind of whole new what surfing really is. It's like it becomes a lot more about like the fun of surfing, and you can be stoked just about surfing because you're not as focused on not missing the swell. And this is why like the last few years, some of my most fun days are like the waves aren't even that great. It's just a nice day out, or maybe my board's riding well. Maybe there's some circumstance, but there are certain days for sure you're excited the waves are sick, and that's awesome. But sometimes there's other circumstances, and if there's always like some kind of wave in the water pushing you, as long as you're able to go achieve that flow state somewhere nearby, like at all times, it definitely creates this new like level of stoke that is way harder to not be grateful for when you don't have a reason to be grateful for it because it's a normal thing. So I've always kind of like to talk about this and think about this, and I think it's a big reason why Kelly Slater is the GOAT and he's the best surfer in the world, because he grew up in Florida. Now look at some of these past pros, you know, from Florida, one's from California. So it also goes to show having good waves all the time is another plus. But if someone's kind of brought up and taught to be grateful and really like pursues it from the get-go, that can be like definite more of a thing. But surfing wasn't as popular when Kelly Slater was growing up. But it just goes to show that like even if you're going to compete with any of these people, it'd be like going to Topu and trying to surf that wave, and you've only surfed like head high waves your whole life is the biggest wave. Doesn't matter how good you are, you can't really go there and compete because it's just like a whole nother level of surfing. It's kind of the same thing with when you're growing up surfing. Like you've only get to surf so often, you're never going to be able to achieve this like crazy high level. So to think that like Kelly Slater was able to achieve this level of surfing in Florida, like on the East Coast, Florida really isn't. I mean, it's better than a few of the other states, but it really isn't even like that high up on like the sickest waves and on the East Coast list. It's a lot more like even more so dependent on swell, and it has like a even worse flat summer swells there, and it can be a lot more hit or miss. Whereas places like in North Carolina and more up north, they can have better like reefs and better exposure areas that swells are able to hit. Florida's just kind of a different shape, and it's also because it's already so deep in the Atlantic. Hurricanes could come up and they're already going to like maybe miss it or maybe just really shoot past it. It's just not known to have like these deep Death Hollow barrels like the Outer Banks or New Jersey or New York or the Northeast. So it's interesting how one of the worst places in the world to grow up to be a surfer in terms of surfing quality waves, that's what Kelly Slater did, and now he's the best surfer in the world. So I always thought that was interesting, and I like how for me personally, like when I am surfing and when I'm going to check the waves and all that, like it's funny how some days they'll be not even that good and there'll be no one out, but it's definitely like pretty good. Like there is thigh to stomach high waves. It's probably a little windy or just not that strong. And that's why I think for people that like when I kind of got more into mid lengths and riding longboards and stuff, it wasn't because for me it really wasn't at first because of like my body. It was more like, oh, there's actually good waves every day, but it's like kind of small. So if I just want to like surf every day, if I just ride bigger boards, that means I get to surf like more high performance every day. Because I think if it gets to a point where it's so small and you're just trying to grovel every day, you're actually going to get more performance after out of riding like a longboard or a mid length, as long as you've learned how to ride it properly. And it doesn't take that much time. It's just look up some stuff on the internets, ride the board a little differently, and really just manhandle it. Just pretend that board that thing owes you money. You got to like really just like turn that thing around, just up, down, like push it. A lot of pushing. And you on the smaller board, you're actually gonna be a better surfer on the smaller board because the bigger board is such a more of a like performance. You have to like try a lot harder to serve the board. But that's where I really like excelled in the bigger boards was like having to surf. There were waves every day now. Like that's sick. Oh, but like it's like maybe not the best every day. Well, I'm just gonna change my board style a little bit, or even like how I'm gonna ride these waves. And that's how I got through living in Venice Beach, which is like closeout city. There's always a little wave in Venice Beach, but it closes out a lot. And you have to figure out like, all right, well, if I'm gonna ride like a little potato chip shortboard, I'm gonna drop in. It's gonna like be pretty racy, and then it's gonna like close out. Am I gonna be able to hit it? And it closes out. It's all gone. Like, all right, kind of sucks. All right, instead I'm gonna grab a big board. Like I still get to go down the line, hit it, and then I get to keep riding the wave, and then let the fins hit the shore. So I think for me, it's like the stoke for any kind of surf, and also in other little bits of news. So my hand is doing a lot better, and I get to surf soon. So this makes me really stoked too, because that's kind of the point of the video here is like the more you surf, I think the more stoked you're going to be, the more grateful you are to like be able to surf a lot and to have like some little waves somewhere all the time. You're more excited to surf the crappy waves because like you always remember the past, driving up and down the coast, missing swells. You're like, all right, nice. I just got to go find some spot and surf. Like it'll be good. It won't be good. No worries. Like I'll have to try again tomorrow, or I can try. Oh, I'll try on Saturday. I'll plan a surf day and I'll go surf. Like that's a little side tangent. Planning a day in the future to go surf with someone, you don't even do that on the whole East Coast. Like the surf's so like the quality or the quantity of swell is so lackluster and it's so unreliable. The train agrees. it's Lake Atlantic is like the pun, is the nickname for the East Coast of Lake Atlantic. So you can't be like, hey, dude, let's surf this weekend. It's Tuesday. Surf this weekend. That'll be sick. Like you can do that in other places in the world and in California. And then when the weekend comes, okay, how is it? Let's go here. Like, oh, it's better here. It's worse here. On the East Coast, you can't be like, because Sunday's going to come. You're going to call your friend, like, hey, let's go surf. He'd be like, well, did you see it's Lake Atlantic today? And he's like, crap. Well, I guess we'll plan a surf trip to Indonesia. And like you pretty much, your surf trips, they aren't like a little Saturday to the local like Point Break. It's a week-long trip to Indonesia because that's the only way you can like plan a surf trip on the East Coast. So yeah, I thought that'd be a fun little topic for today's stream. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Please smash the like, hit subscribe. Let me know if you agree with kind of like the East Coast like is the best. It's not really what I'm saying here. I just like to talk about just like the scarcity mindset that you had developed. And then when you're actually in like this hilarious abundance, like there are lots of waves and you're able to switch it and be really stoked on that. You can see how people, it's easy to take it for granted to like always have good waves. So yeah, everyone have a good one. Smash the subscribe, like I said, and until next time, peace.